Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was deferring to the members of the committee, and I want to appreciate the courtesy of allowing me to ask some questions of the author of the bill at this time. And Chairman Hughes, as I've mentioned to you before, I took the initiative of going to visit with our elections administrator. And some of the concerns that have come from them have been the live stream and the maintenance of the video. Have we, and I know that you and I have had this conversation, have we addressed the how long they'd have to maintain? Because just for your, unfortunately, Bexar County has had 14 elections in the last 18 months. Quite a few of those, and with having to keep the live stream, that would be a big unfunded mandate.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Menendez. And you and I did talk about that, and we've been working on addressing that. It's not in one of the amendments I just laid out, but there will be more discussion on the floor and opportunity for more amendments. So I hope we can keep talking about that and finding a solution. There should be a way, but it's not addressed in these amendments. So it's not addressed in the bill yet.
Very good. And then is the requirement to scan both sides of all documents, is that still in your current version of this bill?
I believe that is still in the current version of this bill.
And the reason is that double scans are going to increase the need for securing all the images. And with the law now, do you have it to the last 6 signatures on file for comparison? It's the last 2 years.
So this does have the more signatures, be allowed to look at more signatures. And the thinking behind that was, if we have 2 that we're not sure about, by looking at more signatures, it's a greater opportunity to qualify the signature. But yes, but so the more signatures are in the current version.
The concern that some have is that by having more signatures, for example, when my father had his stroke, his signature changed. And the question would be, would the fact that his post-stroke, he's not going to be there to be able to explain he had a stroke, would they use the different most recent signature as an excuse to knock out his?
Well, thank you. And I want to make sure I understood the question, because I think your father's situation would be one that would be benefited by this provision, because they'd be allowed to look at more signatures to qualify the vote, if that's what you're asking.
Yes, I am. I'm just concerned that people's signatures change over time.
Oh, yes.
And that we need to be very concerned that they're not, that any one of them that doesn't look the same isn't used as an excuse to knock out that person.
That's right. That's important. And of course, there's also the cure process is also going to come into play, which we're glad to have in this bill. It was a separate bill last time, didn't make it through the House.
And I know that in the past, when we have changed the requirements for machines and others, we have made allocations for counties, because one of the things that is a concern also is that we're going to ask them to reprint all forms and envelopes, and that's going to be another unfunded mandate on our counties. Right now, the estimate's $75,000 in the first year just for Bexar County alone. And then there's going to be obviously outreach and media to instruct voters on the new requirements for the mail ballot portion of this legislation.
As far as the requirement for the ID for the mail ballot, yes, sir. I know that the greatest concern we had about unfunded mandates in the regular session was, of course, the paper backup on those electronic voting machines, either buying new machines or retrofitting them. The chair of Senate Finance was kind to provide money for us to get that done. And that is passed. That was the biggest one we saw. We haven't seen a fiscal note with local government impact on this yet. So may I just ask if we just have a running tally and keep looking at it, because I don't know the answer right now. But I'm not aware of any big ticket items at this point. But can we keep talking about that?
We will definitely keep talking about that. Now, on the actual impact or effect of how this works, while I was there, I was noticing the room where the tabulation of mail-in ballots and others, and I was told that poll watchers are allowed in that room. One of the concern was that do we define the roles of the poll watchers in the elections room? Because sometimes, if not somehow regulated or defined at points, there may end up being more poll watchers than you actually have employees, or a one-to-one basis. And so one of the ideas that came up would be a ratio of poll watchers to actual employees, so that you have a manageable situation. We're all for transparency and everyone seeing what's happening, but we don't want to have poll watchers touching things or interfering with the process when we're just trying to manage an election.
That's right.
Is that something that you're open to?
Well, sure, we need to talk about it, and I want to make sure I haven't missed anything because, Senate Bill 1 does not do anything about increasing the number of poll watchers. That's been in statute for a while. As you know, candidates can have poll watchers, parties can, write-in candidates can. So we're not increasing the number of poll watchers at all by this bill.
My thought would be that if this bill is going to do an overhaul and there have been propositions for training that possibly we could help the elections process by saying, let's say in the election tabulation room, there should be a limited number and that they shouldn't be roaming around freely, that they should have a position where they can see everything, but they're not in a position to interfere with the actual tabulation.
Well, that's important, as you say, both that they be able to see and hear and that they not interfere, because they are just there to observe. So if there's a better way to word that, you help me with it. But I want to be clear, nothing in this bill increases the number of poll watchers. That hasn't been changed.
My final question at this time would be, have you had an opportunity since regular session to this new crafting? Because I know there are changes in this bill from Senate Bill 7. Have you had any opportunity to discuss this legislation with any outside groups such as MALDEF, NAACP, League of Women Voters, or any other outside groups?
I don't know of any outside groups we've discussed this with. We talked to members of the Senate and members of the House. As you know, we met with the entire Senate Democratic Caucus to go through the bill. I don't think we've met with any outside groups other than members of the legislature and maybe folks and of course we heard from folks back home.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Senator.